Hi, everyone. Welcome to Brattleboro's Town Matters podcast. This podcast is meant to be a brief update on what is happening in Brattleboro town government. I'm your host, Town Manager John Potter, broadcasting from the BCTV studios in Brattleboro, Vermont. Today, I will give you an update on the Selectboard's last regular meeting held on May 20th, several RTM-related meetings, and a preview of their special meeting for May 30th and their next regular meeting, which will be on Tuesday, June 3rd. At the last meeting on May 20th, the board had 3 items on consent: a third-class seasonal liquor license renewal for Martocci's on Elliott Street, a acceptance and appropriation of a $29,700 grant that the town received for municipal planning and in particular for capital programming. Also, they accepted and appropriated a $124,405 grant that the planning department received for a downtown FY25 transportation fund grant. That is for improvements on Bridge Street. So very exciting. The board accepted both of those grants and approved the liquor license renewal by a vote of 5-0. Next, under regular business, the board announced a series of committee vacancies. So if you have any interest in helping the town out, please look at those vacancies and see if one of them is of interest to you and you would want to volunteer for that. All the information about that is on the town website or available in the town manager's office. After announcing committee vacancies on May 20th, the board did a closeout hearing for a community development block grant. This is a requirement of those federal grants. This one was for the Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust Scattered Site Program. And so they heard from Bruce Whitney, representative from Wyndham and Windsor Housing, about the success of this grant, and the board closed the hearing. Following that, there was discussion of a suggestion by the Central Corridor Passenger Rail Coalition to do a resolution, for the board to pass a resolution on reestablishing passenger rail service going between Brattleboro and New London, Connecticut. And they passed that resolution by a vote of 5-0. Next, several representatives from Green Mountain Power entered the meeting and discussed a number of upcoming projects that GMP is doing in Brattleboro. They talked in particular about their efforts of undergrounding the utility lines, particularly on the top 10 worst circuits that get shut down a lot for storm-related issues. And the board was very supportive of this work, and no motions were made. Following Green Mountain Power on May 20th, the board heard from DPW Director Dan Tyler and Mike Maker from NewGen, who is a consultant that the town hired to do a utility rate study. And there was an in-depth look, very interesting, on BCTV if you're interested to look at their presentation on what is happening in the utility. And this is in preparation for upcoming items for passing a utility budget for FY26. Following that, the board had a legislative update on 2 bills in the state legislature, in particular H397, which related to the local option tax distribution, and H91, which is regarding the motel program. There was no motions made on that update. Following it, there was a monthly FY25 budget update. This is a monthly report on the budget that the Select Board had asked for. This one had a projection through the end of the year, which is showing the town is running about $30,000 over at the end of the year on a $24 million budget, so not too bad. The board accepted that FY25 monthly budget report as presented by a vote of 5-0. And the final item that they took up on May 20th was accepting the motions and assigning them to board members for the representative town meeting of May 27th. And between that meeting on Tuesday, May 20th, and the representative town meeting, there was an informational meeting held on Wednesday, May 21st, for the budget item to be considered at the special town meeting, which was held on Tuesday, May 27th at the Brattleboro Union High School gym, and it was well attended. The main motion up for consideration was the town appropriation, so that is the redo of the fiscal year 26 budget that the board had been working working on so hard in April. And the select board members made the motion for their budget and spoke to the budget process, explaining how valuable the public was in drafting this new version of the budget. They also spoke to aspects that they were proud of in the budget and the challenges and compromises that went into crafting it. And finally, they talked about their intentions for the FY27 budget and what they'd like to do better in that budget. So there were several amendments that the representatives made to the motion that failed. And in the end, on a roll call vote, the motion for a $24,971,305 budget appropriation for the fiscal year starting July 1st was passed by a vote of 110 in favor and 4 opposed. Under other business at that special representative town meeting, there were 2 motions. One to bring the sustainability coordinator position back to full time using non-general fund money was passed on a standing vote, and a motion to do more accounting of the EMS expenses and revenues, but for the whole fiscal year 25, also passed on a standing vote, and that was the special representative town meeting. The next select board meeting, there's actually 2 of them coming up here. One is a special meeting on Friday, May 30th at 12 p.m. And the other is the regular scheduled meeting on Tuesday, June 3rd at 6:15 p.m., both in the select board meeting room at 230 Main Street. And this is what will be on the agendas for those meetings. On the Friday, May 30th meeting, the board is talking about state legislation that is very current and active and probably getting wrapped up this week in the legislature and may be going to the governor's desk. In particular, they wanted to look at H91, which is changes to the emergency shelter program. On June 3rd, they have a full regular agenda with 5 items on the consent agenda, including a consideration of a tobacco and tobacco substitute endorsement license and permit for Sam's Glass World. The annual dog warrant is on the consent agenda, so if you haven't registered your dog yet, look for your name in the consent agenda. 2 parade permits, one for a march by Out in the Open on June 15th, and the other for a road race, the Red Clover Rovers annual 4th of July road race. The 5th item it's an amendment to the 250 Burge Street floodplain restoration project grant agreement in the amount of $36,452. So those are the consent items for June 3rd. Under regular business, the board is going to hear from Indivisible Brattleboro about a parade permit that they are requesting for a march and rally on June 14th. Then the board will hear from the Rec and Parks Director, Carol Lalott, on a pickleball court project that she's been working on to do a renovation at Living Memorial Park that emphasizes pickleball and awarding a bid around that project. Then the board will get their first look at the fiscal year 26 draft utility budget, so incorporating all of the discussion and the rate study that they talked about on May 20th will be put into a spreadsheet and numbers for the board to consider for operating the utility in fiscal 26. Same deal is their next item for the parking budget, so they'll be hearing a draft parking budget for the fiscal year starting July 1st, as well as several other parking system issues that the board may want to consider making ordinance changes or other amendments to how they're operating the parking system. So if you're interested in parking, come out for that meeting on June 3rd. 2 final items that they'll be talking about that evening are a water tank necessity resolution. This is essentially the bond bank is ready to support the town's secondary water tank project, but they need confirmation that it is a public necessity. So the board will be considering that, as well as making a number of committee appointments, mostly in uncontested seats on the various town committees, but I think also they will be doing interviews that evening for the Development Review Board for a contested seat. I do have a couple of announcements. The town is now accepting applications for various boards and committees. This is an excellent opportunity to take part in your local government, meet your neighbors, build your resume, and contribute your talents to the community. You can find the application and instructions for applying on brattleboro.gov, and for print copies of the applications, call 802-251-8151. That's the town manager's office, 802-251-8151. Finally, the planning department will be hosting a public forum regarding an intersection study on Western Avenue. The forum will happen on June 10th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at the Selectboard meeting room. The focus of this study will be on the William Street intersections with Western Ave surrounding the Vermont Country Deli, as well as the Western Ave and Guilford Street intersection just down from there. At this meeting, you can provide feedback on the preliminary concepts that have been pulled together for these two intersections. That catches you up on what's been happening in town government in Brattleboro. Please reach out to me at the town manager's office if you have any suggestions or want to discuss any of these matters further. There's lots of additional information also on the town website, brattleboro.gov, about what's discussed at the select board meeting, so please check in there for agendas, reports, and backup materials. And thanks very much again for listening.